There is a mystery. Elusive. Unpredictable. Violent. It terrifies most scientists. But for a new breed, the challenge is saving lives. The research is deadly. The laboratory is nature itself.
And potentially could be a storm that has winds in excess. Now, let's assume the worst at this point.
Joe! Bill! It's coming! Everybody underground now! Joe, come on! Get underground! Take cover right now!
Welcome to They Called Us a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Called Us a Movie. We are part of the Main Damie Network. To find more from us, check out the website at themaindamie.com or on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Main Damie, where we are also now a proud member of Geek Vibes Nation. You can find them at gbnation.com. Welcome back to They Called Us a Movie. This is Anthony Delvecchio, and with me as always is Dan Aquino and Mark Meyer. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. Not so much a bit, but I don't know if it's just me, but I kind of got slightly nostalgic for one part of this movie that we watched where they had like the old labels for the cans for Pepsi and Mountain Dew. And it was just like, oh, that's right. That's what they used to look like. I just find it interesting, which will go into something that I'll talk about shortly, of just seeing how long ago these product changes happen and like not even realizing it's been that long. That was just something I've been thinking about since watching the movie.
Hopefully it's not weighing too hard on your head.
No. It's like COVID and then this. You know, that's sort of... Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Hopefully that's what you think of before you go to sleep, so you actually get some sleep. You get a full 8 hours. Oh, remember when they had the white cans of Pepsi?
Pepsi Clear. Or Pepsi, what was it, Pepsi Free?
Oh, Van Hagar.
No, Pepsi Free. No, Pepsi Clear was the Sprite looking one.
Okay.
And then Pepsi Free, I think, was just the caffeine free version of Pepsi.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about Pepsi here, and we're not sponsored by Pepsi yet.
Yeah.
But this week, as we've been doing the past few weeks, we are going to start with what we've watched. So, guys, Mark, we'll start with you because it's going to be quick, I assume. What have you watched this week?
Yeah. It's actually, I held one thing back that I actually watched this week. I took into the phenomenon and watched Hamilton.
Ooh.
Okay. I watched 10 minutes of it, and then my wife looked at me and said, I'm not into this. And I'm like, okay. And then we turned it off and watched something else.
I really liked it. I actually watched it twice. First time I watched it through, as I do with all movies and everything we do, I watch it through with the subtitles because of the hearing disability I do have, just to make sure I was getting everything correct. And I loved it so much in terms of just seeing the production while looking up and down from the subtitles. So I watched it through a second time without subtitles on and was more blown away by just the way they use the set, because it's just one set there and they have like a rotating floor in there, and just the way they just make it feel. You don't notice that it's just one continuous set the whole time, and they do some really cool things in that musical. If you're not really into the music or the theme or anything like that, it's an easy bounce off in that first song. But I am one that enjoys American history I enjoy weird takes on music and things like that. So I was in for the long haul, also just to be able to make sure I at least gave it its fair due for the full 2 hours and 50 minutes or something.
Damn, it's that long? I didn't even realize.
Yeah. So it's split up into 2 acts, and Act 1 is much better than Act 2, even though Act 2 has my favorite character in it. To be honest, I loved a lot more of the other cast members that were not Lin-Manuel Miranda. You know, he's really good, but the other people just, I remembered them more and were more excited when they came on stage. But if you like musicals, which I have a tangential sort of thing with, because my grandma loves them, my sister loves them, so Turner Classic is on a lot in my house and has been for years. So if you like that, if you are a fan of hip-hop or rap and just want to see it used in a different way, all the criticisms about it are valid that have come out. Is a play that was made in 2015, completely different climate than we have now in terms of how you look at the Founding Fathers. It gets a lot of historical stuff wrong anyway, but that's more so because he needed to build a story. So there's a lot of Hamilton and Burr stuff. It doesn't really happen, but they needed to have a hero-villain sort of thing, because that's one of the few things everybody knows about Hamilton, is that famous Got Milk commercial.
Sure.
With the Aaron Burr.
I believe that Got Milk commercial stars a person that is in this movie.
Oh, wow.
That we watched this week, yeah.
Someone very famous directed that ad. Was it Michael Bay? Yeah, someone big directed it.
We'll have to look it up. Just from a production standpoint, I was blown away. It's just really well done.
I had heard that the biggest historical inaccuracies was that they didn't really dance and sing all that much back then.
That's true.
But that's the only thing I heard.
Yeah. Oh, that's another cool thing about play. But it is like not one continuous song, but there's no real speaking parts of the play. I think there's like a few lines. It's worth it if you've had any interest in it. You will know immediately in the first song or two whether you're in or not. And I also watched right before we jumped on this podcast, I found out Supermarket Sweep is on Netflix. I had heard it randomly, like on Twitter or something. So after I watched the movie we watched this week, I just searched for it on Netflix and it popped up. So I watched one episode of that, and that might be the wackiest game show that I love because it's real dumb. The entire show is dumb, but it's just fun to see the people. When you have one contestant, of the three, there's always one team that has no concept of how to grocery shop and know what the high items were. The teams that finished first and second had each over $1,100 in prizes and groceries in their cart, and the team that finished third had like $400. So they were not going.
Bastard.
Yeah, they were not going for the high-end item. But it's always fun watching that. It has the most. If Alex Trebek is the best at doing that little awkward get to know the audience section, this is the most awkward because there's no flow to it. It's like, oh, hey, how you know them? So what do you do? And you do something else?
It's like he's really meeting them for the first time ever.
Yeah. It's not that there's a card in front of him or anything.
Who was the guy who did Family Feud? The very first guy. He was like super creepy.
Oh, he's
Richard
in
Dawson.
Richard Dawson.
Yes,
Yeah,
he would always
Running
hit
Man.
on the women.
Yeah.
He was get kissed.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have to get an amalgamation of these three hosts somehow.
Yeah, it seems like he was like not wanting to ask them about their personal lives.
He's telling them about his
personal life. Sort of like going, I heard you have a job.
You work for a living, apparently.
I don't know.
That's good.
But it was just funny. It was just made it more awkward because obviously those people aren't in front of a camera a lot, so
Sure.
They're stammering. But yeah, so Supermarket Sweep's great. So that was my weekend in movies outside of my normal watching YouTube stuff. I was happy to report that I did actually watch something culturally relevant this week.
Look at you. You're all grown up. What
Yeah.
about you? What about you, Dan? What did you watch this week?
Semi-quiet week for me, movie-wise. I got in the obligatory July 4th movie, Jaws. I watched that, and that's always a great time. And then I watched the criminally underrated, in my opinion, Dr. Sleep from 2019.
Okay. Yeah, I watched that too, just to throw that in there.
Yeah, I saw that in the theaters, and having seen The Shining, obviously, it definitely helps. But I think this movie kind of stood on its own from The Shining as well. I always like Ewan McGregor, And I think the girl who played Abra, the child, Kaylee, I can't remember her name, Kaylee something. I think she's going to be pretty good. So I would keep an eye on her. Kaylee Curran, that's the name.
Yeah, she was good.
Yeah, I just enjoyed it. It was not something I was expecting when I first saw it, because I thought it was going to be more along the lines of The Shining, more horror based.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Definitely-
there's certain
definitely
points.
actiony.
Yeah, a little bit more suspenseful, but yeah, I enjoyed the way that they really delve into how there's more than just Danny Torrance who has this capability. I mean, it's Stephen King's world where everybody is essentially psychic.
Mm-hmm.
I just like how they delved into it and how it's almost like the X-Men, really, right? There are stronger telepaths than others. It was good.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed it. It was a little more actiony than I was expecting, but I didn't necessarily hate it. I agree with you in terms of you kind of have to have a peripheral understanding of The Shining, but you don't necessarily need to have like seen it like 3 or 4 times. Like if you have an understanding of what The Shining is about and you know those kind of key cultural moments of it, like here's Johnny and all that kind of stuff, they like make allusions to, but I don't think it's super necessary. No, I liked it. It's Mike Flanagan who did the Haunting of Hill House, which was great. Interesting to see Jacob Tremblay like show up for a scene and a half. Like he's the little kid, the baseball player.
Oh, that's right. From was he in Bad Boys or Good Boys?
He's in Good Boys. He's in Room, a bunch of other shit. I think one of Mike Flanagan's first movies he was in. I think that's what that connection is.
And Mike Flanagan's done some really good horror movies.
Yeah,
so it's
great
just like
stuff.
horror. His horror resume is good. Have you ever seen Gerald's Game?
I haven't seen Gerald's Game, but I've seen Oculus. I've seen Hush. Before I Wake was the movie that Jacob Tremblay was in, but I haven't seen that. And I saw The Haunting of Hill House. But I have not seen Gerald's Game yet. Yeah, that was good.
I would
What were the
recommend
other ones?
Gerald's Game. The first 4 that he's known for on IMDb are just like all bangers.
Yeah. No, I like the villain. I like Rebecca Ferguson in that as Rose the Hat.
And I like the one guy, the Native American actor.
The dude from Fargo, the
Yes.
TV series. Yeah.
So
He's great.
good. I love that guy. He plays a badass to a T.
Yeah, the guy from Fargo, I think he was season 2 of Fargo. So Steve Zahn, we're gonna say.
Yeah.
So it's Zahn McClarnon who plays Crow Daddy in this movie. Yeah, he's great.
So good. In Fargo, he's kind of like the right-hand man for the family.
Yeah.
So he's the guy who does all the dirty work. And he kind of plays the same character in Dr. Sleep, where he's the right-hand man to Rose the Hat.
Yeah.
And he's smart. He's intimidating. He looks cool. Like, goddamn, this guy's awesome. But I don't know if they meant to do like the whole like he's a tracker thing. Do you know what I mean? Did they want to do that stereotype, or was it? I mean, they've been around forever.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, Stephen King doesn't necessarily stray away from stereotypes, so might have kind of been like that. I wouldn't be
Okay.
surprised. Yeah.
Because my understanding is that the knot in which they're called, right? They've been around for centuries.
Yeah.
So maybe Crow Daddy was, an indigenous person and just kind of went through the centuries in America. So that would be my understanding. But yeah, he's badass.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, I watched that. Is that the only other thing you watched this week?
Yeah, that took me 2 sittings. I started to watch it kind of late one night, and I watched the director's cut.
Okay.
So that's about 3 hours.
Okay. I just watched the theatrical.
I didn't see a difference between the director's cut and the theatrical. Maybe
There's a half-hour difference, though.
yeah, I don't know what they added.
That's
crazy.
I'd have to see. I'm sure you can look it up, but
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. So if that's all you, I'll go into what I watched.
Sure.
I watched Dr. Sleep, which was actually I watched before last episode, but I forgot to mention it. I finished at least the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, as well as Fire Walk with Me, which was the theatrical film that came out after. So now I'm all caught up besides the Showtime season that they did like in 2017. So there's that. And then that was good. I finally got into it. Like I would say by the end of my watching it, I got into it. So I'm kind of looking I'll probably try and figure out a way to get that third season to myself somehow. After that, it was a very horror themed week. Besides that, which Twin Peaks could definitely be considered horror, as well as I watched the Child's Play remake, which was
with Aubrey Plaza.
Who I love. But it was fine. It's very forgettable.
Mm-hmm. It was weird. They make Chucky out to be like a sympathetic villain.
Yeah, I didn't hate that. I thought I didn't dislike the fact that they were kind of like, well, he's learning these kind of he's got the best of intentions, but he's fucking it up because isn't understanding what he's doing. I thought that was an interesting.
They make Chucky into a stage 5 clinger.
Yeah, he's definitely a stage 5 clinger. Brian Tyree Henry was good, who I like from Atlanta. He also played,
he the cop?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he was good in that.
Yeah. So I watched that, and then I watched Crawl, the alligator movie, which was decent. Yeah, I liked it.
I liked it.
It was very kind of under the radar movie that came out last year. I'm surprised I didn't wind up going to see that in the theaters. But
that's Barry Pepper, right?
Barry Pepper showing up in a movie. Yeah, I haven't seen him in forever.
Yeah, it was a good role. It was he and I don't know the daughter's name, but she plays the like college swimmer.
Yeah.
It was good. It was it had a nice little undertone of family in there.
Yeah, it's a very simple story.
Exactly.
No, it was enjoyable. I liked it. And I think that is it. I feel like there's something else, but just I've watched through I Think You Should Leave again for like the 6th time because I could watch that series in one sitting and it just makes me laugh every time. It's so stupid, but it just gets me every time.
That series, I don't get it. Like, I do get it, but I don't get it.
I 100% understand if anybody watches through that series and just like, I don't understand what's so funny about the show because I can't explain it. There's just so many skits in there that just have me dying. There's like a commercial about laser spine specialists of like, which is supposed to be like rehabilitative surgery, but then turns into this guy being scammed by this other guy that pretending to be like this music producer, and he's terrible at it, and it goes on for like 2.5 minutes, but it never drops the pretense that it's all a commercial for a laser spine specialist.
Is that the meme with the two guys playing guitar that I say?
No, it's not. That's another one that's super weird too.
Okay.
No. But
The only one that I remember is the car. Was it the
focus group?
The focus group on the car. That was pretty funny.
Oh my god. Yeah, I could talk hours about that show, but it's such an acquired taste. I can imagine people just being like, all they do is shout, which is 100% accurate. But yeah, no, if you've never seen it, if you have Netflix, give it a shot. If you like weird sketch comedy, it's pretty funny. But yeah, people yell the entire, like every sketch has someone yelling in it. It just makes me laugh though. But like the full season is like 2 hours long. It's like 6 episodes. And
you're such a strange person when it comes to pop culture and like TV, because you'll love these highbrow, like wearing the white wig movies, man, where you judge the shit out of people, and then you'll like something like this where it makes 0 sense.
Oh yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I can't tell you what I love about this show. It just like still there are sketches. I've said I've seen it like 6 times. Still sketches just have me like in tears.
Well, that's the mark of something that's really imprinted on you.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things that like even if I'm like putting it on, I'm just gonna put this on in the background because I've seen it so many times while I do stuff, and I'm just like stop doing stuff and just watching it. It's like, oh, this wasn't supposed to be my upfront like attention getter, but it just is every time. But that's it. That's not what we're talking about this week. That's what I watched. I'm pretty sure that's all I've watched, but maybe I'll remember something. Oh, we started watching Unsolved Mysteries, the new series on Netflix, which is fine. Not quite the Robert Stack theme to it. Yeah, it's definitely missing something, and that something is Robert Stack. That's all I've watched. But Mark's movie this week. Mark, do you wanna introduce our movie this week?
Yeah. So I chose a movie that I saw. It popped up on Netflix. It was part of the VHS collection that I had when I was a adolescent to preteen. And it is Twister from 1996, I believe. I have watched this movie way too many times, but not recently, because obviously I am not a monster that owns a VHS player. It was in the collection with that. I had that, Varsity Blues, and Ferris Bueller were my VHSs growing up. It's definitely one that I put in all the time to watch. I was happy to see that it was on Netflix. I didn't know if it would be good for this podcast, but I think it'll do pretty well. It's just as 90s as I remember it. It was a nice throwback. Rest in peace, PSH.
And Bill Paxton.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That wasn't Bill Pullman? No.
Bill Paxton? Yeah, two people are deceased from this crew.
I had completely forgot that Jonas was played by Cary Elwes. Is that how you say it?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I was going through a mini panic attack today when I knew I had to say his name in the credit roll. Or like, I don't know how to say this name.
Yeah.
Because I've heard
Cary
Elwes.
I had completely forgotten he was in it. I had thought Annie Potts was in this movie, but that girl just, I guess my 11-year-old brain had also watched Ghostbusters.
You were thinking of Helen Hunt, right? That's
No.
who it was. Oh, okay. So close.
Yeah, so that girl was just a character actor that was in that. Yeah, it's a fun movie. I think there's a lot to pick apart in it. It's not the classic I thought it was when I was 11, 12 years old. It's definitely one of those movies that if it was still on basic cable, or I still watched basic cable, that I would just leave on if it was on there.
Okay, yeah. Twister from 96, directed by Jan de Bon, as director of Speed, Speed 2, Cruise Control, The Haunting, and he made his name more as a cinematographer for movies such as Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, Flatliners, Basic Instinct, Lethal Weapon 3, among others. It was written by Michael Crichton and his wife Anne-Marie Martin. It was her only writing credit to date. It stars Bill Paxton, not Bill Pullman, Helen Hunt, Cary Elwes, Jamie Gertz, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Lois Smith, Alan Ruck, Sean Whalen, who is in the aforementioned Aaron Burr Got Milk commercial,
Yeah.
Scott Thompson, Jeremy Davies, and Joey Slotnick. IMDb score of 6.4 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 57%. Budget of $92 million. Box office $242 million. Second highest grossing film in 1996. Behind Independence Day.
Okay.
So we had Mark's take on Twister. Dan, where are you coming from with Twister?
This movie still holds up, man. I love this. I've always enjoyed the campiness and like the schlocky acting. It's not going to win any awards, we were saying prior to recording, but it'll always have a place in my heart. I love Bill Paxton. God rest his soul. He could do a different range of acting, and I just loved it. One of the only two people to be killed by a Terminator, a Predator, and an alien. I don't know if you know that. Do you know who the other person is?
Danny Glover.
Lance Henriksen.
Okay.
Come on, guys. I mean, this is big stuff.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you. God rest his soul, but yeah, he's so stiff in this movie.
Yeah, yes.
Really? I don't see it that way.
I think he's so stiff, and it works for who he is at that moment in his life, but he's not the extreme. He's supposed to be the extreme.
I just like how he gets dunked on by everyone for being a weatherman.
I don't get the imminent rueage from this Bill Paxton.
Listen, like I said, no one's going to win any awards here, but they all have fun with it. I love how Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt just hate each other's guts and wind up together again at the end, as if it's going to work again. Mm-hmm. It's clearly not. And, like Philip Seymour Hoffman plays a dummy. He's
the Dust Man.
Here's my question. What is Dusty's role in this team? I don't know if there is one.
He's the comic relief, I think.
But everybody else has this very specific role. I guess he's providing the tunage. Is that what it is?
I think his bus has like all the TV monitors in it.
So someone needs to drive that.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, he doesn't really. I think he's just there for comic relief, and I don't know what that really plays into with tornado hunting, but
just keeping it light, I guess.
Yeah, right. The only part I ever remember from his character is how he pronounces food. when he's
Food.
talking to food. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think the only thing he does in the movie is I think he sets up the video camera.
Yeah, he's just there. He tells Helen Hunt when things are happening because he was just by a television at that moment.
Yeah.
I was like Mark. I'm not even going to say that I had this on VHS and I watched this a ton. We probably could have done this whole episode without me having watched it again because it was like muscle memory. Once watching, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this scene. I remember this scene. I could probably tell you exactly what this person's going to say next. I haven't watched this in 20 years, probably close to it. It's fine. It's that mid 90s. It's just it's a seeing eye single. It does what it needs to do. Kind of like Independence Day, which was the #1 movie this year of 96. It's looking back on it, it's not great. Like I said, Bill Paxton is so stiff in this movie, and I've pointed out in my plot like places where I can't stand his line reading, and I've always hated these specific lines. I don't get the chemistry with Bill Paxton or Helen Hunt in this role, in either roles. It's also that like contrived thing where like two people are divorced, but it's like, oh, well, why are they divorced? Why don't they get along? It was like, oh, well, one had commitment issues. And then like we don't really see any of the problems that would have led to their divorce within it. Obviously, they're mad at each other, and that's just supposed to do. It's like, well, you guys were storm chasers. Like if they gave him like, they have that whole story and when he was the Extreme, when they first met him, when he was drunk as a skunk and he throws the Jack Daniels bottle. So it's like that could have been a part of his character. It's like, oh well, I was drunk the entire time when we were storm chasing, and I felt like I had to get clean, so I had to get away from this whole situation. That makes a lot of sense. Just the, oh well, you couldn't commit, and then, well, you didn't know how to be a wife, blah blah blah. Like this is generic. I don't know why we need these two to have gotten divorced, but we'll just have something very contrived in it. Like, and then, because it said so in the script.
You're the one looking for the longer, grittier reboot then.
I just need a reason. Like I was self-destructive back then and I needed to get out and I just had to leave. That could have been it. Now I'm clean and sober and now I'm a stiff and I'm boring and I've got a bunch of guys that I think could have been better in this role just because the Extreme he's supposed to be putting on airs, right? That's his whole arc is that he gets away from this storm hunting stuff and he tries to be someone that he's not, who is a weatherman. And then his whole old life comes back because that's who he really is. Bill Paxton is playing the guy as if the second version of him is the person he is.
Yes.
He's that stiff.
Well, to be
guy
fair,
that's going to make a relationship with Jamie Gertz's therapist character in this film. So
to be fair, man, he drives through storms. He drives through a house in this. That's pretty extreme.
But I'm not buying it. I'm not buying Bill Paxton as that extreme dude.
But you can see how much he loves chasing tornadoes. That's the extreme part.
I'm telling you, I'm not getting that.
Oh,
I'm getting
what?
Bill Paxton is nailing the weatherman for me, but he's not nailing the extreme.
I don't know how much more extreme you can get.
He's having houses thrust into his way. Oh, he could have totally stopped and went around the house. We'll get into that. But
that's the extreme part. You go through the house, all right?
Yeah. And
that's
also
something
comes
extreme.
With one of my least favorite line readings of his.
Well,
but
he gets put into the eye of the storm, man.
Look, these are all acts of God that are thrust upon a real stuffed shirt.
He could have turned back. He could have turned back and tucked tail at any time, like a real meteorologist probably would.
And he doesn't because the script told him not to. That's what I'm saying. It's like this version of the extreme of Bill is just doing this stuff. Like, all right, so I'm just gonna spoil it. Who would be great in this? Billy Bob Thornton. I would buy Billy Bob Thornton as the extreme. And he would look completely out of place as the weatherman, trying to pretend to be someone he's not. And that's how I feel like the extreme should be played. Bill Paxton's not doing that for me. That's what I'm saying.
Do you think Bill Pullman would have been a better actor?
He would be just as stiff.
I think Bill Paxton he'd be even more stiff.
I think Bill Paxton is a much better actor than Bill Pullman.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That
I feel like Billy Bob Thornton, he would just be like a slob.
I think he could clean. I think in the mid 90s he could clean up. He was clean cut in Armageddon. played
That's
the
true.
NASA. So the person that they were planning to use was Tom Hanks, which I don't think he's right for it either.
No, I think he would have been worse.
Yeah, but I have some other names here too that I could get into right now. So I have an A tier and a B tier. So there are people that I thought were too big for it at this moment, which I was surprised to see Tom Hanks was actually considered for this. I thought Bruce Willis was too big for it. Probably wasn't right either. Too much of a tough guy. Kevin Costner was too big at this moment, which sounds crazy.
In my head, just before you read off, because I don't know if he's on your list, but the first thing that popped in my head when you said other people was for some reason Tim Robbins.
Tim Robbins is there.
Tim Robbins. Yeah. Okay.
Tim Robbins, I could see it. So here's my A.
I see him more than the others so far.
I have an A tier of Billy Bob Thornton, Gary Sinise, Jeff Daniels, Kevin Bacon, or Tim Robbins.
Gary Sinise would have been good as Cary Elwes, like as the antagonist.
Okay.
I could see that.
And I have
Cary
a B
Elwes
tier.
was really misplaced in this movie.
I have a B tier of Michael Madsen and Val Kilmer.
Ooh.
Who was probably doing Batman at this moment ish. Around there.
Yeah, was that 95, 96? I can't remember when Forever came out.
It was around the same time.
Yeah.
And then not popular enough in 96, but in hindsight would have worked. Viggo Mortensen was around the same.
Because that was G.I. Jane, right?
Well, it was just he's about the same age as Bill Paxton. So Bill Paxton was born in 1955. Helen Hunt was born in 1963. So I kind of just looked into actors that were born in that gap to kind of figure it out.
Okay.
But so apparently they were also looking at Kurt Russell, which he would have been too old for Helen Hunt though. That would have been 12-year age gap, which just really wouldn't have made sense.
I mean, he can play extreme though.
No, yeah, he totally would work, but you'd have to recast her, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Personally, I would think like a 12-year age gap with these people have been married and divorced. I feel like that would be like, oh, well, he totally took advantage of someone that was way too young for him. Yeah. They worked together. They're in a 2020 mindset that was like, oh, well, he must have been grooming her.
Yeah. That's definitely popping up now.
Yeah. I mean, even the 8-year age difference is, but. I mean, they felt like they worked. Helen Hunt's she's kind of a tomboy in this movie, so she kind of, has that older mind. She seems older than, I think she was like 33 so yeah. They kind of met in the middle, it felt like. But yeah, it's fine. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman's kind of annoying in this. Like, he's a good actor, and you could tell he's a good actor in this movie, but he's annoying. Yeah,
I agree. I think they wasted. There's a few actors who are wasted, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is definitely one of them.
You got Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, just reading maps.
Yeah.
There you go. What was Philip Seymour Hoffman in prior to this? Because this came out, 96 we said?
96. This would have been like pre-Boogie Nights, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Pre-Boogie Nights would have been pre-Big Lebowski. I don't think he was in anything really of any interest. Let's see.
Nobody's Fool. When a Man Loves a Woman. Man, nothing really sticking out. Scent of a Woman was 92, but he was pretty young.
Yeah.
He was in an episode of Law and Order.
There you
go. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, this was like his big breakout role, I would assume.
Yeah, and then Boogie Nights really got him in.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, pre-Boogie Nights, this makes sense then. He would have to play the annoying douchebag.
Yeah, exactly. Then he kind of really hits his stride in the late 90s. Yep. Boogie Nights, Next Stop Wonderland, Big Lebowski, Happiness, Patch Adams, Flawless, Magnolia. I hate Magnolia. But that's for a different podcast. Yeah.
Not really. We usually talk about movies we don't like on here.
Yeah, it's true. So maybe one day we'll do Magnolia.
Don't spoil my next choice, guys.
Yeah.
That violates the length of film rule that I'm going to impose. That movie's over 3 hours long.
That's a rule I wholeheartedly agree with, by the way.
So
a lot of the times your totalitarianism kind of irks me, but this I'm with 100%.
Oh
yeah.
All I'm hearing is that we're not doing the Snyder.
100% we're not touching the Snyder Cut. I don't care if it's the best movie ever made. Yeah. We're not reviewing the Snyder Cut.
We don't need death threats in our life.
Well, we could use a little bit of that here and there.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? Spice it up a bit.
Get some heat. Yeah, get some heat.
Right.
You guys want to get to the plot?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
all right. Dan, what do you got for us?
All right. So, our good friend Tia, if you listened to the podcast before, you've heard me talk about her all the time. She is a part of Geek Vibes Nation. She's a good friend of the podcast. She has her own podcast called The Top 10 with Tia. It's a weekly podcast where her and her friends get together and they discuss top 10 lists. So top 10 directors, top 10 Marvel villains, you name it, they've probably done it so far. Go give them a look. Again, she's a very good friend of ours. She's a great person. She deserves your patronage. Is that a thing for podcast patronage?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, there you go.
All right, we're going to be right back. But before we do, we're going to stop and listen to some friends of the podcast. So we will be right back.
Hey, this is Ken M.
Padawan J.
Coach Duffy.
from the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. Every week, the ODPH is talking sports, movies, TV, comics, and more. It's always a parlay of topics on each episode. You can find the ODPH on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever you find great podcasts, such as the one you're listening to right now. Don't forget to check out OchoDuroParlayHour.com, where you can find the links to all of the ODPH social media accounts, links to the bands whose music you hear each week on the show, hashtag 607 podcast info, and parlay points, our companion blog section of the show. Thanks for listening to the ODPH. Now get back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Welcome, travelers. Seems like you're looking for a story. Well, I got one for you. It involves adventure, friendship, and all sorts of...
Earl, why don't you tell him about that time I stole that big-ass melon?
Yeah, I was going for more...
Or you could tell him about the time I kicked your ass, Earl.
I wouldn't ever tell them.
Do I need to get my ref gear on?
Okay, everyone, shut up. Now come with me as I tell you a story from afar. Hey everybody, my name's David. I'm the DM for From Afar Podcast. From Afar Podcast is all about four friends separated by distance but brought together by adventure. Hope you all stop by and give us a listen. Thanks.
And welcome back. And now it's time to get into the plot for Twister. We open in Oklahoma in June 1964 as a massive thunderstorm rolls in at a farmhouse. A family watches the news as it reports a tornado warning. For some reason, the family is very casually sitting in their house as apocalyptic lightning happens outside. I know my ass would be already in that storm cellar while this is all happening, but their small child is sleeping upstairs. Eventually, they move their ass to the storm cellar, which is apparently like 100 yards away from the house. Is that a thing? I meant to look that up. It was like if storm cellars were that far, but
You would think that they would be attached to the house.
yeah, I mean, exactly, or at least like nearby.
And plus, that kid would be lost, by the way.
I think it's some distance because even the end of the movie's storm cellar, where that family comes out of, seems to be away from the house a bit. I don't know if it's as far as this opening scene.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a long way to go for
I'll never
a family
understand how people could live in that area.
Yeah.
You know what I
don't know.
mean? Like the Storm Central or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Who settles there?
Tornado Alley.
Yeah, Tornado Alley. Why do we do this to ourselves? What? There's got to be somewhere better, right?
Probably.
The crops grow good there. So.
That's what it is.
Yep.
I guess that's a fair trade-off.
Good crops. Yeah. Pros and cons list. Let's make one for Oklahoma. So they go into the storm cellar, and the dad claims it could be an F5. They almost leave the dog outside, but this was the trick that you see in every mid-90s disaster movie, because the dog never dies. He even pulled this shit in Speed 2 Cruise Control. We see you, Jan de Bon. And then, for some reason, the dad tries desperately to hold the door shut, which doesn't work, and he gets sucked up right into the tornado.
It's pretty great.
And
But then literally the dog, the little girl, and the mom are perfectly fine without the door. So talk about wasted effort on the dad's part.
yeah, he gets sucked up in that tornado and spit out in West Canaan, Texas.
I wish they would have had, like, what is it, the Wilhelm scream?
The Wilhelm scream. Yeah.
That would have been great.
I'm ignoring the Varsity Blues reference from Mark. We're just going to move on. Flash forward to present day, and the NSSL record outbreak of tornadoes will be hitting the Midwest of Oklahoma. And we cut to sweeping country landscapes as we meet Bill and Melissa as they go to meet up with Joe, Bill's estranged wife. And we meet Joe and her team of storm chasers getting ready to go chasing. Everyone is really excited to see Bill, especially Dusty, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Dusty keeps calling Bill the Extreme, which, as mentioned, Bill Paxton is horribly miscast for the role of a former crazy weather chaser. Bill eventually makes his... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, my favorite part of this whole section is that the entire crew knows Bill better than Bill knows Bill. And it's sort of like, hey, welcome back. Glad to see you're back. And he's just like, I'm not back.
Wouldn't it be great if they had the wrong Bill? They keep saying that Bill is this extreme guy, and he's like, I'm really not that Bill. Like, no, you're Bill. No, I'm telling you, I am not that Bill. I've never met you people in my life.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, I would like that.
That's what you would like. That's what would make this movie better for you.
Yeah, and it turns out to be like a psychological kind of movie.
They've gaslit Helen Hunt's character the entire time.
Right. Like, oh, that's right, Joe. Yeah, Bill.
You were never married, Joe.
Right. That'd be great. And she really died in the Twister back in
1964.
Yeah.
So Bill eventually makes his way over to Joe, who tries to avoid him as much as possible. He's there to pick up her signed divorce papers. She avoids it, prepping for their storm chasing. And Bill tells her that he's getting married to Melissa, who she calls Melinda because she's a bitch. Joe hands over the papers, and it turns out she, quote-unquote, forgot to sign one of the pages. Then he says, you forgot one of these, you got to sign. So she says, oh, I have to read it now. She's just being really difficult. And he came all that way. And then she says the reason she made him come all this way for her to pick up the papers was because of Dorothy. I guess the mislead was supposed to be, you would think that Dorothy was a daughter, but it's not. It's an instrument package meant to study the inside of a tornado. It's basically a fancy garbage can with sensor balls inside. It's supposed to get sucked up into the tornado and then release all these sensor balls so they could track what's inside the funnel. The hope for Dorothy would be able to increase the preparedness time for tornado from 3 minutes to 15 minutes.
That would be pretty extreme, Aunt, if he was a deadbeat dad.
That would be, right?
What about our daughter, Bill? I told you I have bigger plans in life. I can't be tied down to Dorothy.
Yeah. It would be great if when they went to Meg's house and he comes down from a shower, it was like you could just see that he's got like a back tattoo that just says the extreme on it.
Yeah, he should have had some like stunner shades or whatever. Frosted tips.
I'd want to see a movie about the extreme, not this.
Sure.
Extreme, not the Weatherman version of the extreme.
Well, we got to get the prequel.
The
right?
Twister prequel.
Yeah. I don't know what you call it.
The extreme.
Twister the
2,
Extreme.
The extreme. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's do it.
It's the sequel that everyone's clamoring for.
To be honest, I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been something to do with Twister.
Yeah.
A prequel or a sequel. Yeah. Even a direct-to-video sequel.
See, he's not the right age for it. The perfect person to play the extreme nowadays would be Timothy Olyphant, but he can't play the young extreme.
They do kind of look similar.
Yeah, but he'd be great. I would believe Timothy Olyphant as the extreme because he's got like that edge to him.
Yeah, it always looks like he's about to snap at any second.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll give you that one.
So they get a reading that a tornado is nearby, so the team sets up to chase it. Bill plans to let them go ahead without them, but Joe never signed the papers in full, so he's forced to follow them, just putting people in danger because she's petty.
Yeah.
While they drive, they come across another team led by Jonas, played by Cary Elwes, a former colleague of Joe and Bill's, who worked at the same lab as they did. Now Jonas has corporate sponsors and fancy gadgets, so it's basically Rocky IV.
Yeah, he's sold out. Jonas sold out, man.
They got look at all these fancy gadgets versus look at all these, homegrown,
supplies
cobbling
and everything.
things together, just like Rocky versus Ivan Drago.
Like, who would have thought that there was an underground like weather?
Yeah. Is this a job
match?
or is this a hobby? Or are these people getting paid?
Well, that's why I figured.
Are they getting grants?
I think it's grants, because I was gonna say I figured that's why Bill wanted to leave to become a weatherman so he could get paid, right? Everyone else is just kind of living off the kindness of strangers here.
But he's anti. So the storm chasing business has gotten too corporate because he even says about Jonas, he's in it for the money, not the science.
God, that makes me want to puke.
It's like, how much money is in it? Come on.
Right. Yeah. Like, was this guy a millionaire all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they do keep repeating that they're running out of grant money, and at the end she says, "Oh, we're gonna get a new grant. We got to figure out how to use it."
I don't understand how grants work, to be honest. I wasn't smart enough to get a grant in college, so
they just grant money to you.
But like, how does that help you live? Essentially, they're granting your work, not paying you money, right?
I mean, I'm assuming it'll hopefully cover room and board and the salaries of people that, work for you.
Who do you think sponsors Cary Elwes' character in this?
Boeing, maybe?
Oh, okay. I was gonna say
Lockheed Martin.
That would make more sense, right? NASA. Do they
Yeah.
sponsor people?
I think so.
Right. I don't know.
I think Boeing's a good call.
I was
Yeah.
hoping you would say something silly, Ant, like like Doritos or something, because we're going extreme, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
No.
I don't know. They don't come off as extreme.
No.
Well, the Extremes team is sponsored by Pepsi, apparently. As
Yeah.
we find that later in the movie.
And nowadays it would be Monster Energy.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like Cary Elwes is when he was cast as Jonas, they told him he was gonna have to give like a Midwestern accent, and he just totally forgot the day of shooting. He's like, oh shit, I have to do an accent, and just kind of like, yep, that sounds good, okay, and just rolled with it because it's really distracting whenever he's on camera. His accent is incredibly distracting.
It's bad. It's not great. Cary Elwes has never been great at doing any American accents.
But they keep insisting that he plays an American.
Yeah, he could have just easily been British, right? In this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no reason to portray him as anything other than British.
Yeah, he's over here on a work visa because he's a storm chaser. Apparently.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna tell me that America is the only place that chases storms? I
Nope.
think other countries have storms.
Yeah, maybe. I assume so. But it
seems like a very
super
American thing.
It seems very American. But
Yeah, that's a good
gotta
point.
be, right?
Or when's the last time you heard of the UK getting hit by a tornado?
Yeah, man, that's a
good question. Well, there you go.
I'm thinking it's more to the point that Americans would think of the idea of we got to go drive at that tornado and not away from it to safety.
So you think Brits make fun of us for that? These Yanks and their guns and storm chasing?
Yeah.
Sure.
They're so extreme.
But he could be like, he could come over here for university, as the Brits would say, and then he gets, wants to be just generic weather, and then he just gets enamored with the idea of chasing storms. He doesn't need to be like, well, I need to learn about tornadoes so I can bring it back to the UK.
Well, now this is something that we explore in Twister 2, The Extreme.
Or I guess you can't have a spin-off movie. You can't have.
Well, because right.
You can't have a Jonas sequel movie.
Yeah, or like a crossover comic or something like that.
Yeah. I guess you could do like also a prequel, but it's Jonas,
And my name is Jonas or something like that.
Right. That'd be the opening song. Yeah.
Right. I dig it. I love it.
Yeah. So as they come upon Jonas's convoy, one of the convoy runs Bill off the road and he blows a tire, which is probably a crime, that they just let go. They stop to get the tire fixed, and Bill spots Jonas showing off his version of Dorothy, which is called Dot. He basically just lifted their invention. So Bill and Jonas get into a scuffle over the stolen design, and their respective teams have to break it up.
I love how Bill was between knocking the hat off and punching Cary Elwes' character when he approaches him.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of just slaps him on the top of the head.
Yeah,
that's an ultimate disrespect move, by the way. You slap someone's hat off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had it done many times to me. That's why I know.
Oh yeah, this happens to you a lot.
Oh, it happened to me constantly. Whenever I wore a hat, I was always in fear of it being knocked off.
That's the Instagram post right there. So Jonas and his team, Melissa and Joe all head into the diner for some food and drinks, while Bill hangs out outside throwing dirt in the wind. Jonas approaches Joe and tries to glean info from her, and she kind of rebuffs him. And then Joe and Melissa have a talk. Joe says that Jonas is waiting to see what Bill does before making a move, and then Melissa says that she understands that Joe still loves Bill, but hopes this isn't been all a ploy to get him back. And then outside, the sky turns green and the team rolls out. Bill jumps into Joe's truck, leaving Melissa to drive behind in his truck. And I'm not sure what Dusty's role is on the team quite yet.
Well, it's kind of explaining that, or was it Joe that said it? It was gave Bill a new nickname, that he's the human barometer.
Yeah.
And
so stupid.
Yeah, I wonder if they kind of just keep Dusty around. Just like, he tries so hard, and God bless him, he just doesn't have the talent, but we're too nice to turn him away.
We need a sixth driver.
He's been
Right.
there since the beginning.
And he would die if he were on his own, essentially.
That's probably.
Right. So it's more out of charity
Yeah.
than anything.
So Joe and Bill have a conversation in the truck, mostly a fight regarding what went wrong in their relationship. It's mostly generic things about commitment and what it means to be in a marriage, but none of these things are shown as character failures in the actual movie. Tornado touches down, and Joe eventually goads Bill to drive into a ditch as he drives towards the tornado, which Bill cannot get out of, so then he crashes it into a small bridge. Joe tries to get Dorothy ready to get sucked up, but the tornado is right on them, so they have to hide under the bridge, and the tornado sucks the truck up and moves on. The truck gets dropped right in front of Melissa driving Bill's truck and nearly takes her out, and Joe's truck is totaled, and Jonas's team drive past without stopping to help. Then we do that thing where a character suggests something, another character says, there's no way in hell that's happening, and then we cut to that thing totally happening, which is not the only time it happens in this movie.
Happens a lot. Yeah, and I would love to know, I would love to watch this movie with a real storm chaser and just see, like, if you went under that bridge, would you really survive?
I don't want to know storm chasers. I don't want them in my house.
Well, that's
Where
a
do
great
they-
thing about the quarantine. We can do it over Zoom.
Where do they rank in the, I guess, the list of people who you don't want in your house? Who's above them?
Like people I really would definitely like Florida beach people.
Oh, really?
They would be
Wow.
below them.
So, did you feel this way about storm chasers prior to watching this movie?
No, just up until Mark suggested watching this movie with a storm chaser, and I was like, man, that's like one of the last things I'd want to do. It just popped in my head right now. It's like, yeah, I probably don't want. They're probably always dirty. Like I assume that they're always on the road, and
That's
then
true.
like get into like a lot of mud because it's always raining when they're going chasing storms. So like I'd probably have to steam clean the couch after they get up off of it. Yeah.
I would imagine they're almost like sea captains, but with way less cool stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're like nomads.
Right.
Yeah. Rolling Stones. Wherever they lay their hat is their home. I don't need any
you
of
don't
that
want
noise.
that. Yeah, it's a good
It's
point.
about commitment. What
'Cause
about
then-
commitment, Joe?
Because then they just kind of crash, right? And you can't get
Yeah.
rid of them.
A lot of couch surfing in the storm chasing world, I would assume.
Bill, I really need you to leave my house. Oh, I'm waiting on the big one, Aunt. I can't go. I'm waiting on that number 5.
We see it happen. We see them crash Aunt Meg's house.
That's right.
And she, like, hundreds of dollars worth of steak she has to feed these people. I
Well,
didn't
and
see anybody
that's-
give her any money.
That's what I was saying before. They basically live off the kindness of
Yeah.
strangers, really. That's why you get into it for the money, friends, okay?
They're modern day hobos.
Always go for the money. Don't let your integrity get in the way of money.
Yeah,
Be Jonas.
Yeah. If we could say one thing about this movie, it's to be Jonas.
Yes.
Mark, were you gonna say something?
I forgot that we haven't actually gotten to the Meg scene yet. I have a comment when we get there.
Yeah. Save it.
Yes.
Yeah, so where were we after that? We do the thing where, yeah, it's totally not happening, but then that thing totally happens. So they strap Dorothy to Bill's truck, and Bill's driving, Joe's the passenger, and Melissa's in the back. Then Joe and Bill's team catches up to Jonas's team, but then they realize the tornado is going to shift course, so they bail out onto another road while Jonas's team continues down the main road. Sure enough, the tornado shifts direction and heads into the direction of Joe's team because you remember, Bill has some sort of magical sixth sense when it comes to tornadoes. He's a human barometer. It's like the lamest nickname ever.
Yeah.
Next to maybe the extreme. They get closer and closer to the twisters, which have now split into two, and Bill does the stupid thing of driving right into them with no place to go because now he's on a bridge. And
probably the most famous scene of this movie.
Mm-hmm. We got cows.
Yep.
So
I
one
think
cow
that's
goes
the
flying.
same cow.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the big that was the trailer trailer scene. Yeah. So the tornado hits them straight on and they get tossed about, and then the tornado disappears. So they're fine. Joe and Bill get out of the car in celebration as Melissa basically shit her pants. And this is severe endangerment of Melissa throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
Whose only crimes seem to be she's not Joe and she's wearing a pantsuit. The team celebrate and mention that they're not too far from Joe's aunt's house in Wakita, and they want to bombard her with people so she'll cook food for them. And then Joe does the thing again and says there's no way that they're going to her aunt's house, and then they do.
Yeah.
Aunt Meg cooks up some steak and eggs, which look delicious.
Yeah.
But Melissa, go ahead.
I two things I thought were gonna happen in the scene, and I don't remember if the one does happen or I thought it was gonna be a whole thing where Melissa was gonna be vegetarian or vegan,
Mm-hmm.
as they just kept throwing the meat and stuff on her plate, and she was just looking at it.
Yeah. That was my next note. I said Melissa reacts to steak like she's a vegetarian, but it's never mentioned if that's the case.
Yeah. And the non-joke about where the steaks came from, which I didn't get. Whether she was joke, he's like, hey, where'd you get all these steaks? He's like, oh, did you see my cows outside? And
well, that's the joke is that no, you don't see any cows because that's the cow right there.
Yeah, but like,
I don't think she has cows.
Yeah, but it was kind of, I was like, oh, well, it would have been okay, but it felt like a wink and a nod sort of thing. Probably was. But but that vegetarian thing I was waiting for that. And maybe that's just from personal experience.
I would guess that it would be pretty irresponsible of her if she had cows and she slaughtered her own cows to slaughter all the cows at the same time. You would see cows. Like I feel like she'd save the other ones. Like, well, I don't need to kill 4 cows. I'll just kill one, slaughter that, and we'll have steaks for a while.
Yeah, you still need milk.
Right. I just think it's irresponsible to not have a backup cow.
Yeah.
For situations like this.
That's like the first rule of cow owning.
Yeah. Always have another one.
Cow.
What if Joe's team of storm chasing hobos comes in and they need steaks? Well, I just slaughtered my last cow and I didn't replace it. What an idiot I am.
Yeah.
So, Mark, this is stuff you got to learn if you're gonna own a house in Oklahoma.
That's my dream. How'd you know?
My dream is to own a place that's near a holler. So Melissa reacts to the steak like she's a vegetarian, but it's never mentioned. And then they watch an interview on TV with Jonas, and they all scoff at him. And Dusty says he's going to rue the day he goes up against the extreme. Imminent rueage. So this transitions into a story about a drunk Bill getting out of his car naked and throwing a Jack Daniels bottle at a tornado. And this story is much more believable with Billy Bob Thornton as Bill. I get to see Billy Bob Thornton doing that, like in real life.
Yeah, real life Billy Bob Thornton throwing a Jack Daniels tornado.
Absolutely. So then they explain the Vegeta scale, and Melissa asks how many of them have seen an F5, and they say that only one of them has seen a F5.
Meaning Joe. Of God.
Finger of God, meaning Joe when the storm sucked up her dad. I don't know why that's funny to me. It just is.
Well, they have such reverence for it, the F5. It's almost like someone mentioned Voldemort, essentially. Sure. We don't talk about the F5.
Yeah, everybody stops what they're doing.
Right.
Anybody seen an F5? What?
Well, it's not
What's this question.
Right. Like, how dare you, young lady? No one talks about that. Well, no one. She didn't know. She didn't. If Joe wasn't too busy being a total jerk to her, maybe they could have talked and she could have figured this out. Yeah. But no. Now she looks like a jerk.
Is it safe to say we're Team Melissa?
Oh, she's the smartest person in this movie by far. We stan Dr. Melissa Reeves.
Absolutely. So Joe has a moment with her aunt as they talk about her feelings for Bill, and the team rushes out to chase the next storm. And here's one thing, especially about Melissa: why wouldn't they just suggest Melissa stay at Joe's house, at Meg's house at this moment?
Right, you have unlimited stakes.
Well, just you know what, Melissa? It's getting kind of dangerous, and we're just going to go chase another storm. Why don't you hang out here with Meg? Have a nice talk. She seems like a very lovely person. She's got an awesome dog named Mose. We'll be back. We won't put you in harm's way again.
And really, Bill Paxton should have stayed as well. It should really, this movie should have just been I need you to sign this paper. I will, as soon as I get back from chasing storms. Sounds good. I'll see you at, what's her name's house?
Meg.
I'll see you at Meg's house. Sounds good. End of the movie.
And that was his original plan until she revealed Dorothy. It's kind of manipulative.
Yeah.
Super manipulative of her to do that. But yeah, so then he's like, I'm going to give you to the end of today, and then I'm gone. But that doesn't even happen either. I think it's 24 hours, I think this movie really is, right?
Yeah.
I think
It's
so.
only one night, but then it ends by the next morning.
Yeah, I think he's completely in once, Melissa leaves and all that. Then that
Yeah.
whole I'm only here for a day thing doesn't matter anymore.
Right, but that is still the first day
Yeah.
when that happened. So they head off going through some dirt roads and cornfields, and Bill then has to wire Joe as if she needs a lapel mic. It was a moment of physical contact, completely contrived and pointless. Never happens again, and she's never wearing a lapel mic again. I guess it's supposed to set up that she's going to say everything over the radio for later, but eventually the team makes its way back to the main road just as Jonas's convoy is driving past, almost causing an accident. As they're driving, Bill looks to the sky and says, "We got to get off of this road," which is one of my least favorite line readings in this movie. They turn off the road and then they lose track of the tornado, but then they eventually figure out that they're just about to drive into it. They get some hail and the team pulls over to set up as Bill and Joe drive closer. Bill hops into the flatbed and starts turning on Dorothy. They stop the truck and try to get Dorothy prepared and off the truck. Tornado heads towards them and knocks power lines down. One of the poles knocks onto the truck and the tornado disappears. Dorothy is knocked off the truck. It spills all the sensors out. Team tries to figure out where it went, and then they think it's gone, but Bill says it's back building, and we know he's right because it growls like a lion. Second movie in a row where they just use lion sound effects.
Yep.
And Bill puts Joe back in the truck, and despite her protests, and basically drives over Dorothy. They get out of the way of the tornado. Then Joe has a speech about her vendetta against tornadoes, as if Joe is the Quint of this movie.
Yeah. She's the Brody. She's right.
No, she's Quint.
I thought it would be Mrs. Brody in Jaws: The Revenge talking about how Shark is just hunting the Brody family.
Yes, it's kind of both because the tornadoes in this aren't searching out for Joe. Joe's searching for the shark, essentially.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right.
Mrs. Brody goes down to the Caribbean and the shark follows.
That would be something. Joe goes to the Caribbean and the tornado hits her.
What's that tornado? This tornado is just making a beeline right for the Caribbean, from Oklahoma to the Caribbean.
Just a swath of destruction across the United States.
Line.
It can't be stopped.
I watched everything at it.
They try nuking it.
Oh, I 100% think there is an Asylum movie about a nuclear tornado. Guarantee. I'm not even joking about that.
It is probably just named Nuclear Tornado.
Absolutely.
It's not even clever.
Yeah. So she has a speech about her vendetta. Bill tells her to get over her dead dad and look at what she has, which is him, which isn't true because he left her. Melissa hears all of this over the radio.
Look what you have in front of you, Joe, at least for another 24 hours.
Yeah, Melissa at this point is when she starts becoming the only adult in the movie.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So she hears all this over the radio. Then the team finds a motel / rest stop / drive-in theater to stop for the night. Melissa spends the time in the motel contemplating her relationship. And Joe signs the divorce papers, and Bill talks to Joe about maybe the whole Dorothy system is too light. Suddenly, the TVs start to flicker, and Bill and Joe know something's up. Joe's team. So this is one thing. Joe's team has about 7 different people who have never stopped researching and looking at Doppler radar and weather patterns this whole time, and somehow a tornado sneaks up on them.
They're always surprised. Always.
It's on top of them when they finally realize it.
Yeah, that's definitely not how twisters work. They don't just spring up without some type of warning.
The tornado you least expect the surprises.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. This tornado's sneak level is at 100. It's like that. It's the Skyrim meme.
Yeah.
Sneak maxed out.
So Dusty comes running up to Bill and he says, "It's coming right for us." And then Bill says, "It's already here." It's my second least favorite line reading. Bill
Son of a bitch. That is a classic line, and I will not allow you to besmirch that.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
I thought that was going to be your worst line.
It's so good. It's so 90s.
So I kind of did this in the order that they happened, but yeah, that might be my least favorite one.
I can't agree with that. That's part of my childhood, man. That line, "It's already here." That's prime trailer. That's like the perfect trailer line. It's already here, and it's read to perfection.
Yeah, I hate it. The tornado blows through the drive-in, which was playing The Shining. That has nothing to do with anything, just mentioning it. And the team hide in an auto repair shop as Jeremy Davies' ineffectiveness almost gets Joe killed as he hides in the truck, which would reoccur in 1998 when his ineffectiveness leads to people dying and Saving Private Ryan. They hide in the auto repair shop. The professor gets his head sliced by a flying hubcap, but it would have been even more awesome if it took the top of his head off.
That would be pretty great.
Not enough casualty.
Yeah, I think there's only 2.
So it's her dad who gets sucked up, and then
3.
I guess Jonas and his driver.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so 3. Man, that would be so badass if it was kind of like the original Dawn of the Dead.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yep. And it's just blood trailing down and topples over. I think I think Twister could have used that.
Yeah. So originally this movie was supposed to be rated R, and then they re-edited it to be a PG-13. But that totally would have been awesome in the R version of this movie.
Yeah, 100%.
So they're hiding in the auto repair shop, and then everything winds up crashing into the auto repair shop. Car, drive-in sign, everything almost kills them, making the auto repair shop the worst place they could have decided to hide. Then Melissa freaks out, as well she should, but the storm then passes. Mark?
No, I was agreeing with you that it was absolutely the worst place to hide. There wasn't any, once that roof and walls came off, it wasn't like they were hiding under anything.
Yeah. Dusty listens to the reports on the news and says the storm is going to hit Wakita head on. They pack up the vans and plan to go there to make sure Meg is okay. Bill goes to grab Melissa, and Melissa makes one of the most mature decisions ever made in a film ever. She says that she has to leave Bill and that it's basically no one's fault, and she's not even mad. She just can't handle this storm chasing life, and she knows that he's never going to stop doing this. And he's not even mad either. They're just super amicable about it. And she's just like, bye, I know my way home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was like,
that's a queen move right there, man.
Yeah. Yeah. He was basically like, yeah, you're probably right. I
It's
missed
super
the Dutch
mature.
man.
And really, Bill is only screwing himself over again because there's, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there's no way that he and Joe work out any longer than maybe a year or 2 after this.
Yeah. I just think Melissa just saw her life down the road, and she's just like, fuck this. I could get me a real man that's not going to be just chasing storms all summer.
Or to get his jollies off. That's the only way he can do it, man.
Yeah.
I need to
what does
think
he
about
do during the
chasing
off
it.
season?
That's a good
Does he,
point.
Does he just pick fights in bars and shit?
Well, according to you, he's not extreme enough.
Probably not. He's probably just cutting himself. He's probably a cutter.
Jesus.
That's something I could see Billy Bob Thornton doing.
Oh yeah, but he'd do that openly. He'd do that in bars just to win a bet.
Just to intimidate the other person. All right, man,
Picks
I don't
a
want to
fight
make trouble.
and just starts cutting his just down his arm.
Really cuts his
fight?
tongue or something like that. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill's just walking around bars, or Bill Paxton's version, just knocking hats off people.
What's Dan doing at that bar?
Right. Oh God, no, it's Bill Paxton. Get him away.
My nightmare is coming true.
And you see him across the room, and he just goes, "You."
Oh, he does the Hulk Hogan point.
Yeah.
Oh God, no.
Knock your hat off.
I just grab my head and run for the door. Not today, Bill.
So the team drives to the Wakita, which takes about an hour, and Wakita has been destroyed by the tornado. They make it to Meg's house, which is caved in, and Bill and Joe go in to get Meg out. They find the dog, and then Meg, who is trapped under a bookcase. And Meg has cut on the head, but is mostly fine. House starts shifting again. They almost get hit by a CRTV. But they eventually get out, and Bill goes back to get Mose, the dog, and does just before the house completely caves in. They put Megan into an ambulance, who's just going to the hospital for observation. And then Dusty tells Joe that the NSSL's radar has tracked the storm, and they're looking at a potential F5. And Joe notices Meg's wind chimes and realizes she has an idea on how to get the sensors to fly. She tells the team to round up every aluminum can they could find and get scissors and tape, and they're off. The plan for the sensors is to create a sort of pinwheel out of the cans and to place them onto sensors, basically giving them wings.
Yeah, it's and apparently Coke is not a thing in Oklahoma.
No, it's not sponsored.
Coca-Cola, not.
Oklahoma
I'm sure
is,
Coke is a thing, but.
Oklahoma is sponsored by Pepsi.
Yep.
So for anyone wondering, the team takes Mose the dog with them for moral support, And the team loads Dorothy 3 and 4 at the Bill's truck, and they head off towards the tornado. Joe and Bill drive up and get right up to the storm and drop Dorothy 3 in the middle of the road and drive off. They watch as Dorothy 3 gets pushed around a bit and then gets knocked over by a tree. Not sure why the sensors don't work at this point, but whatever. And then the tree gets wedged underneath the truck and Bill can't get free. Then the storm tosses a tanker truck at them and then knocks them loose, but then it drops right in their path. It explodes and they have to drive through it. They now have one Dorothy left and continue chasing the storm. Jonas's team is in the vicinity and they hear them on the radio. They try to tell him the dot is going to be too light and he ignores them. Then they try to tell him he's going to drive right into the storm and get killed, and he shuts off his radio and he gets killed by debris through the windshield. They continue heading towards the storm as it picks up a bunch of tractors and shit from Tractor Supply and just starts tossing things into their path. And then Bill Paxton is surprised by debris and he yells out, "Debris!" which is another line reading that I hate.
I'll give you that one. That was pretty bad.
Then they drive through a house, and then Bill Paxton says, "I think we're going in." That was another line I hate.
Well, that's just fun. That's just good old-fashioned fun.
I am completely shocked that at no point during this whole scene there wasn't, a sighting of a sheep to just have them stop short going, "Sheep!" at any point.
They should have had an old woman flying through at one point. That would have been, or at least you get the call back to Wizard of Oz.
There you go. Yep. But he probably could have braked and went around probably. So,
yeah.
He didn't really have to drive through that house. Anyway.
Well, agree to disagree.
Anyway, they drive through a cornfield and set the cruise control and send Bill's truck and Dorothy 4 at the storm, which takes the whole thing up, and the sensors immediately takes readings that get sent back to the crew. Well, then the tornado shifts course and heads straight for Bill and Joe, who now have to outrun a tornado. They manage to do it. They run through a cornfield and make it to a barn, which this barn is full of farm tools, which are not ideal in a tornado, like scythes, axes, saws, etc. So they run out of it, which is for the best because the barn gets fucking destroyed, and they run to a smaller shed. But
yeah, I was gonna say the only thing, not that there's probably a million things we can mock science-wise in this movie, but I don't know if people are faster than a tornado on foot.
They're not even running that fast because they're running through a cornfield. Yeah. But that is like, there is no fucking way these two people are outrunning this tornado.
I could believe the truck when they're driving away from it.
Yeah, sure. No. Yeah. They run to a smaller shed where they tie themselves to some pipes with some belts, and it works for some reason. Everything gets destroyed but the belts and the pipe. Bill and Joe then have a playful fight about who's doing what now that they're probably going to be millionaires, I suppose, and then they make out. The team shows up blaring Van Halen, and that's basically it. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, and apparently during that whole belt thing, they didn't get hit by any debris in the tornado.
No. They did not. They are perfectly fine. But that's it. That's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It is the exact movie you remember from the 90s.
I didn't realize it was as long as it was.
It's just about 2 hours, right?
Yeah. Yep.
2 hours and like 2 minutes or something like that.
But it's an easy 2 hours.
Yeah, I think it goes by pretty quick.
Yeah. I thought it was about 15 minutes longer than it probably needed to be, or I'm not needed to be, what I thought it was.
Would you make this longer, Mark?
No. No, but I thought it turned out to be longer than I thought it was. I thought it was about an hour 45.
It's 20 minutes shorter than Independence Day, which came out the same year, so that's a thing. Yeah. Can't believe that movie was 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Well, listen, Bill, if you're listening wherever you are, we hope you get good reception. I apologize for my co-hosts just trashing you, and I think you were great in this movie. You were a big part of my childhood. And I will defend your honor anytime, even if you knock my hat off. Right? You're my guy, Bill.
All right, great. Do you guys have anything that would make this movie better?
I like the idea, maybe not making this movie better, but making the prequel of how Bill was the extreme and how he came into contact with Jonas, if Jonas were actually British, as he should be. Yeah. Maybe they come up with Dorothy, or Bill and Joe and Jonas kind of come up with it, and he kind of pulls the old Mark Zuckerberg to their Winklevoss twins with Facebook. That would be pretty cool to see how they kind of hate each other. and then watch Bill Paxton just tumble into a drunk stupor. Yeah, I think that's how I would just pull a sequel out of this.
My thing is 3 casting changes. We've discussed one in length. I would definitely replace Bill Paxton. And for some reason, like I said, and he was on your list too, and Tim Robbins was the first one that jumped into my head.
Because they look similar, really.
Yeah.
Bill Paxton and Tim Robbins.
But I would believe Tim Robbins is the extreme more. For some reason, I would flip Alan Ruck, right? That's Cameron from Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
I'd flip him and Philip Seymour Hoffman's characters for some reason.
Okay.
I think if you're going to have Dusty have, the role in the lines he has, I feel like he could probably pull it off a little better.
Interesting. I actually thought I hated that character and what he has to do, but I thought he was good in it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I feel that the couple of scenes with the maps, I don't know, maybe it's me reading into, PSH's later stuff. I thought he would be, really good with the final, when they're doing the hurry, like you take 38 and you go to here at the end of the movie. I don't know. I for some reason I'd flip them. And then obviously you need a better actor to play Jonas, just because he's not villainy enough, if that's a word. For this movie. I think they write the character good enough for this type of movie to be a villain, but he doesn't ooze enough of that like smarminess that you would need from somebody that's stealing someone's design, So that would be it. Just a couple casting changes. I think the rest of me's fine in terms of just being a good popcorn movie.
Okay. Yeah, I would just think about recasting Bill Paxton. And this is one of his bigger roles, but he's nailing the stiff meteorologist aspect of it, but I don't feel like that's right for the actual role that it is. But I mean, this movie is just silly. It's fine the way it, like, there's nothing specifically wrong with it. It's just it's that type of movie. So there's really nothing much else that I would change about it. It was that one of those VHS movies. It really, like, there's just an era of VHS movies, and this was one of them. I think everybody had Twister. Yeah. Probably a whole bunch. That's like one of those movies that just everybody had it.
Yeah, I assume it's the same as with DVDs where everyone had Gladiator.
Yeah, sure.
Just because that was one of the first ones that took advantage of DVD. But yeah, that's what I thought. Everyone I knew had this movie, and we did some tape swapping where my one friend had ID4, and there was like a group of movies from this specific 4-year time period, where my group of friends all watched that same type of movie, and then I had my Ferris Bueller that they didn't really like. But those
jerks.
Those jerks. That's why I'm not friends with them anymore. Just for that reason. The thing I was going to say was, I wonder if you were. I've always been curious about the Helen Hunt character, in that this was right about when Mad About You was big. So I'm wondering if it was more she was sort of the star draw to the movie, and maybe you couldn't find someone better for her too. But again, I don't know. Casting dynamic.
I'm not a big Helen Hunt fan. I think she fits this role, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Is there any last words on this movie? Either one of you?
Go see it. I think it's
see it
in theaters. Go.
You know what?
See it
Number one
Netflix.
movie in theaters this week was Ghostbusters. So it's entirely possible that Twister comes up and becomes the number one movie in the country. So
why not?
Check those drive-ins.
We live in strange times, friends. But yeah, this is definitely worth the watch. You're not going to get blown away, no pun intended, by the overall movie, but it's a lot of fun to watch. It's definitely campy enough to where it doesn't take itself super seriously. It's worth it. I think it's worth a 2-hour watch.
Yeah, that should have been a completely pun intended, by the way. That's a pretty good one.
Thank you.
All right, you guys want to plug your shit?
Yeah, sure. At DeAquino122 is my Twitter account. Follow me there. At Stranger Damies is our Real Play D&D Twitter account and the Instagram account as well. We're closing in on, we're about halfway to 900 followers. So
Nice.
yeah, come join our crew, man. We're taking off, and you could be a part of it. You could say, I knew those guys before they were big, and yeah, that's something to hang your hat on, I guess.
Yeah, we need our hipster fans.
Hell yeah. We're kind of like Joe's team before we become Jonas, right? We're like, man, they used to do it for the D&D, now they do it for the money, which we will 100% do.
Sweet D&D money.
We will 100% do that. Don't even twist it. We will always go for the money.
Speaking of D&D, we have our D&D podcast. Stranger Damies airs every Wednesday. We have a new episode up the day before this one airs as usual. It'll be the first episode of a new session. So check it out, strangerdamies.podbean.com. Search for it. Stranger Damies is probably the easiest way. We're Stranger Damies on Instagram and Twitter. And then every other Monday, we do the Game Vault podcast. And there should be a new episode this Monday coming up, if I'm doing my math correctly. I lose track of it until Tom tells me we're recording a podcast on Friday. And then I'm like, oh, that's this week. So that's Game Vault Pod everywhere, Twitter, Instagram. We have the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/GameVaultPod. We stream every other Monday, and then Thursdays, and then either Friday or Saturday and Sunday nights. Some Wednesdays thrown in there, just if we can get everything technically working for Multiplayer Wednesday. So just be on the lookout for that. Follow the Twitter feed at GameVaultPod for updates on any special streams or secret streams that may occur.
Okay. And we are They Call This a Movie. You could find us at theycallthisamovie.podbean.com, and on all podcast streaming apps, just search for They Call This a Movie, and we will pop right up. We are themaindamie.com. That's our main website, and we are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Main Damie. So you just look for The Main Damie, and we'll pop up on any social media, or basically the ones I just mentioned, because I'm not on that TikTok. We are also proud member of Geek Vibes Nation. You can find them at gbnation.com on all social media platforms. Just look for Geek Vibes Nation and they'll pop right up. They got a bunch of great shows. We're just a couple of shows that they feature, but Top 10 with Tia, and then a whole bunch of other shows that once again, 3 weeks in, I still haven't made a list yet, but I will.
Scene and Nerd.
Geek
Vibes Live.
Geek Vibes Live. Look, Dan's got the plug. And yeah, so they got a bunch of great shows. Probably something that you're into. Just check them out on all podcast streaming apps. Just look for Geek Vibes Nation. And that's gonna wrap it up today. This movie is Twister from 1996, directed by Jan de Bont. So, for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony LaVecchio telling Jan de Bont, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you?